Ready to la caravane, 3 minutes avant le départ, 3 minutes to start.
The road book is on the dash. Rush would be playing on the radio if we had the volume up, which is quite appropriate, I guess, for a Canadian race. Welcome to the Canadian Cycling Magazine podcast. I'm Matthew Pioro. Usually joining me is Matt Hansen, but he's not going to be on this episode. He's actually on assignment, which quite frankly terrifies me a little bit. Probably the possibility of an international incident, but he will return. Fans of Matt Hansen, do not worry. Joining me, though, is Nick Iwanishin. He is someone who's worked with the magazine heaps behind the lens of a camera. Hey, Nick, how's it going?
Hey, great. Thanks for having me.
Nick and I were at the recent Grand Prix Cyclistes de Québec and de Montréal, and we have stories, interviews, insights, all kinds of stuff behind the scenes that you probably will not hear anywhere else. We're going to take a deep dive into those races. Nick even has a tale of violence. It turns out okay though, but there was some violence, and we will get into all of that right here in this episode.
By the way, who's Matt Hansen?
Listeners, no doubt you are very familiar with the Grand Prix. Recently, their 12th editions just happened in Quebec and Montreal. These World Tour races, these one-day events, bring pros to Canada. Pros such as Michael Matthews, Philippe Gilbert, Peter Sagan, Wout van Aert, Tadej Pogačar. Unfortunately, Tadej Pogačar did not return to Canada this year. He was there last year in 2022, where he won in Montreal. But Matthews was back, and he was really trying to increase his wins. He's won twice in Quebec in 2018 and 19, and once in Montreal in 2018. Greg Van Avermaet, in his final year, was back in Canada. He has won Montreal twice, in 16 and 18, and has been on the podium in Quebec 6 times. For me, it's been a while since I've been back to these races. I was at the first 2. However, in the magazine, we have been, and on the website, we have been covering these races consistently with people on the ground. I have written features. Yeah, I've covered it with many stories myself. But finally, it was great to go there and get the stories as they happened and see the action. Everyone, now let me introduce further Nick. He is someone who has shot mountain bike races. He's a big fan of cyclocross. He's shot those events those muddy events. He's also covered CFL. He's covered major political events in Canada. He's won at least one award with Canadian Cycling Magazine. That was for work he did at the track in Milton. And you've also seen his handiwork with the talkies, with the moving pictures. Any gear review you've seen on YouTube featuring me, yours truly, Nick has been behind the camera editing out all my dad jokes. Nick, it was great to have you at the races. Tell me, though, what was your experience shooting road before going to Quebec and Montreal?
Yeah, like you said, I've had a lot of experience doing world championships, World Cups in track and cyclocross and mountain bike, and I had truthfully never photographed a road race before. And I mean, I have a pretty good idea of how bike racing works, but it was amazing. It was just so cool to see. And I do think that this was a pretty good intro to road racing with the multiple laps and the ability to sort of see it unfold every few minutes as they come around. I mean, that it was also great from a spectator perspective too. I think that's why people love these races so much. But yeah, it was just a great intro to road racing. So many good pictures. There was a lot available for us.
And just a reminder that, these are circuit races. In Quebec, there are 16 laps on a 12.6 kilometer circuit, and riders cover 202 kilometers. Montreal is a bit longer and harder. It is 18 laps of, again, about 12 kilometers, and that's 222 clicks in total. It is great for spectators because you see them come around a bunch of times, which is fantastic, unlike a point-to-point where they're gone and then you miss them. Our work started the day before the race in Quebec. It's a Friday in September. This September was on the 8th. We headed to the hotel where all the riders were staying. I was there for interviews. Nick was chasing people down for portrait photography. I snagged Derek G. These are races that G has been trying to get to, probably since they started, since well before he was racing as a professional. His opportunity really came up after his stellar performance at the Giro this year. I caught G just after a short press conference with his Israel Premier Tech teammates, Guillaume Bovin and Hugo Hull. It was conducted mostly in French. G impressed everyone with his abilities in French. And something G said that it surprised me, so I wanted to ask him more about it in English afterward. But in this clip, you'll hear some of my Quebec colleagues jumping in with even more questions for G and his cool connections with the races. Your French is better than mine. Did you say you rode to Montreal?
Yeah. I don't know if I said it right, but...
No, that's what I understood. Like, you rode from Ottawa to Montreal.
John Large organized a ride from Ottawa to Montreal every year. So I went for starting with that one in 2010. So I rode across to Montreal with them and then watched the race and took a bus back. So it was really, really special,
You rode by bike?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Actually,
in 2010?
Yeah, so Voeckler won in Quebec.
Yep, right.
And then in Montreal, he gave me his French champions gloves, and I still have them. Yeah, it was really special.
Awesome.
How come you met him before the race or after the race?
After the race, yeah. I was just asked for an autograph, and he gave me his gloves. So, no, that was a really special day for me.
Where are they now?
They're in my parents' in my childhood bedroom. They're still there. Yeah.
Oh, that's a nice anecdote.
It was awesome. So these races are really special for me, and I've watched them every year, and I've been trying to. They weren't originally on my calendar either, so as soon as I started getting results in the Giro, I was like, hey, can I do Quebec Montreal?
Seriously?
Yeah.
It was not supposed to be on your program?
No, not this year.
So you rode from Ottawa to Montreal. How much time did it take you back then to do that?
Oh, it would have taken me a while. I'm not sure, but probably an all-day thing the day before.
Yeah, with a group or?
Yeah, for sure.
With your parents? Or?
Nice. Yeah, my dad went as well, and
Was it a club thing or? Was it organized by a club? Or?
Yeah, there's one guy in Ottawa who runs a club, and he organized it. And I mean, they might still be doing the ride. They might ride out on Sunday. I'm not sure, but
What's
that was
the name of the club?
The West Quebec Wheelers.
Okay.
So John Large is his name, and he organized the ride, and rode out to watch Montreal. It was really amazing because it was the first time I'd seen pros, in real life.
Okay.
And I think these races, for me, by the end of my career, are a massive, massive goal to get a top result here. So, this year I think it'll be a lot of learning and a lot of, especially from the more experienced guys. But for sure, this is, the level that I want to be at by the end of my career is to be competitive for races like this.
So the pandemic then really kind of put you back, were you going to be on the national team projects when maybe in 2020?
2020 and 2021, I was really looking forward to these. These would have been my big goals because I really didn't do much road racing during then with all the tracks, so they lined up really nicely. But unfortunately, with the cancellations, it was kind of grew the hunger a little bit because you got to keep waiting to do these races that I wanted to do for so long. But
I know you're very careful to say you're discovering things, and I totally get that. But do you have a sense, just from looking at both races, which one you're kind of maybe leaning towards or think might suit you better?
I think probably Montreal. Quebec is very punchy, and I don't think that suits me as well as maybe the longer efforts of Montreal. But I think it also depends how it's raced. Last year, Montreal was raced so hard from so far out that it was really a pure climbers race. I mean, you saw the 3 guys that went to the line were world class. I mean, you always get a really deserving winner, but that year it started so far out, and it was the hardest edition I've ever watched, for sure. So I think a big part of it depends on how it's raced. And yeah, I think if I had to guess, I think Montreal would suit me a little bit better.
Have you done the circuit so far in Montreal?
Montreal, I did the circuit in 2010. I rode 1 lap, but yeah, I feel like I've watched the races so many times. I know them pretty well, yeah.
And that was Derek G. with his story of riding from Ottawa to Montreal at the age of 13 to catch the Grand Prix Cyclistes de Montréal. And he didn't add he took the bus back. He didn't ride back, but he did. Still, it's a big adventure for a young cyclist, and clearly an inspirational one at that. A lot of chatter on the day before the Quebec race was about the weather, so Canadian, but there was rain in the forecast the whole week leading up, possibly 10 millimeters of rain. And the Quebec City race has never seen rain. Montreal in 2015 got really wet, but other than that, Quebec has always lucked out in terms of the forecast. And in that press conference I mentioned earlier, a lot of the questions were like, hey guys, what's the rain going to do? Boivin said, obviously the rain would change the nature of the racing. And apart from increased risks, like say in the corners with things being slippery, the race just simply wouldn't be as cohesive. So meaning the finale could be quite different. And to remind everyone, the Quebec race, usually it's in a sprint at the end, and it's a thrilling sprint, but the Quebec follows usually more of a script than Montreal. However, rain could have flipped that on its head. Before the race, I have to admit I had a bit of weather concern. I wasn't sure, how I'd manage some of my equipment. Nick, what were your thoughts going into a possibly rainy Quebec City race?
Yeah, I mean, logistically, it changes the race from a racing perspective, but I think it also changes the visuals. Like maybe the cyclocrosser in me really wanted to see the rain. I just think that adds a bit of chaos. It just changes the mood. I will say that even though it didn't rain, it was overcast the whole day, and it makes for beautiful pictures because it's nice soft light. You don't have any harsh shadows, and it just sort of added to the mood of that nice, beautiful Quebec City. I brought all the gear I would need in case of like monsoons. I had bags for my cameras and everything was ready to go. I will say that most of the professional cameras nowadays are all weather sealed, so rain isn't a huge concern unless you're standing out in it for 15 hours. So it's not like a consumer camera where it gets a bit of rain on it, it might malfunction. The equipment is built for days like this. We didn't see any rain, but it just seemed like the skies could open up at any moment in Quebec City.
It's true. The rain didn't materialize. There were a few sprinkles, and it was enough to get the riders kind of dirty. They were surprisingly dirty at the finish, grimy. Think that also had to do with some construction or some streets that were a little dusty. Apart from my conversation with G and some other IPT riders, except for Michael Woods, I couldn't catch him. I also spoke with members of Team Canada. A special part of these World Tour races is that they not only include all the World Tour teams, like Ineos Grenadiers, Jumbo-Visma, Lidl Trek, as well as some pro teams like Israel Premier Tech, but also there's a national team. This national team gives up-and-coming Canucks the chance to gain World Tour experience. In 2014, Michael Woods was on the national team. Now he's a Tour de France stage winner. Back in 2014 with Woods, there was Benjamin Perry. Now he's been on the podcast and he currently races for Human Powered Health, but he was on the national team once again. Oh, I should add that in 2016, Perry was in the breakaway in Montreal and ended up taking the Best Climbers Award. He was back at the Grand Prix for his 6th time, I spoke with Perry to get a sense of the significance of the races for him and some of the young athletes that he'd be riding with. Benjamin Perry, this will be your 6th appearance at the Grand Prix Cyclistes de Québec and de Montréal. Tell me about the significance of these races on your career.
Yeah, so this is my 6th time doing it, and it's been a real experience for me just because I remember the first time I did it, I was a second year U23, and it was such a huge race. It was still a pretty new race in Canada. I think there'd only been 2 editions before, I think 2012 or 20...
I think it was 2014 maybe.
Yeah, 2014 was the first one I did, yeah, but I think 2012 was the first year it happened.
2010.
2010, wow. Voeckler one.
The Voeckler one, there you go.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So it was a pretty new race, and I just kind of left juniors, and I did it, and it was like really thrown into the fire just because I hadn't really done I'd never even done a 0.1 level race the first time of doing this. So I done like maybe a handful of 0.2s, and most of them were just kind of Saguenay or Beauce. Well, I hadn't even done Beauce yet, actually. I did this before I did Beauce, because we did Beauce the following year, 2015. But it is cool to see these races because like Australia have their big race, and China has a race, and like a lot of countries that aren't traditional cycling nations have a race, and this is kind of ours. Like this is Canada's race. Like Belgium has this and that and the other, and same with France and Spain and whoever. But for us, this is the big one.
It truly is the big one. And it has been a big one for you in the sense that in 2016, you were in the breakaway in Montreal, and through those efforts, you got the KOM jersey. Is that jersey on your wall somewhere?
Well, actually, you don't get a jersey. You just get like you get a bottle of maple syrup. I think I got it. I didn't get a trophy either. You just kind of go up on stage for it. It'd be cool to have like a keepsake from it, but yeah, we didn't get any keepsakes then. Well, I think it was just a jar of maple syrup, but...
Give a Canadian a jar of maple syrup. Yeah, great.
I mean, it's usually national team guys who win it, the KOM, just because it's heavily dependent on being in the breakaway, so...
Yeah. Well, I think it's only you and Nicholas Zukowski who've actually sealed the deal on the KOM award. I think I should double check that.
Yeah, I got to check how the points work, because back then I remember it was like 1 point every single lap, and then the third to last lap was 4, and then the next lap's 8, and the following lap is 10.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, and it's a 16 lap race. So if you have to win all of them plus 3 laps to go to like guarantee, and it's only points for the winner. So it's interesting because like people fight over the points. Sometimes in the beginning of the breakaway, it's like if 2 guys in the early break fight for those single point laps, neither of them will win it. So it's always kind of like you have to. I think the one year I was the youngest guy in the break by far and the only Canadian, and I was kind of just like, just give me the points every lap, because if we fight, no one's going to win. So something like that.
Now, this year you are on the national team, and you are a veteran, and it's a mix of, there's you and your human-powered health teammate Pier-André Coté as the senior riders, and then there's younger riders. What kind of advice have you been giving them, or have you given them advice?
Yeah, it's been fun just riding with the guys today and having dinner with them last night, breakfast this morning, and just been talking about how the race breaks down and how I feel like the racing at this level has actually kind of changed in the last years. Because when I first did this race, it was always breakaway goes quite quickly, the pace ramps up and up and up and up and up, and then it's super hard the last hour or so, and that's it. Whereas a lot of the races I've done this year at the World Tour level are just insane start to finish. So I mean, we'll see how it goes. There's a chance of rain tomorrow in Quebec, so that will have a lot to do with how the race is raced. But if both races are dry, I hope, or I assume, it's going to be breakaway goes pretty quickly. And I think for these guys too, it's good that we have PA, because I'm still not sure how I'm going to be with all the sort of setbacks I've had this year. I mean, I've been working hard, and we'll see what happens, but PA definitely can get a good result as a Canadian national team member for sure tomorrow in Quebec. So it'll be good tomorrow because we haven't discussed a plan yet, but I'm sure we're going to have interest in the breakaway, and also just working to support somebody like PA to have a good race.
Now, do you have any personal goals in either of these races?
don't know. I just want to be a good teammate. I guess I want to help PA definitely tomorrow because he's very hungry. I also want to do the best for myself and see where my legs are. But I mean, it's pretty easy to tell with like the laps and the circuits and how everything goes. You can see pretty quick. Like if I have done 10 laps tomorrow and I feel amazing, then I'll maybe I go forward in the end as well with PA, and we work together to position ourselves. But in this sport now, it's like everyone's got 6 teammates. Like every leader has 6 teammates dedicated completely to them all day. They stop with them when they have to pee. They get them their bottles. They do everything, and it's pretty hard to compete with that a lot of the time if you aren't like solely focused on one thing. So, I mean, I would like to be in the breakaway just for the experience again of doing that, and just getting to ride around closed city streets of a major Canadian city and knowing a lot of people on the side of the road cheering for you, just seeing all the Canadian people, Canadian things, just being at home and doing that at the highest level is such a cool experience. So it would be nice to be in the break one of the days, but I mean, it's also a good thing for our young guys as well to experience. So
That was Ben Perry. I should add 2 things. One is that we all know that various teams have different resources, let's say. Some are better funded than others. The national team is, though, the scrappy little squad. I'm pretty sure it has the smallest budget of anyone there. It had 2 sport directors, Nigel Elsay and Nicholas Masburian, 2 former pro riders. And they were not only directors, but they were doing soigneur duties like filling bottles, making sandwiches. They weren't doing massages, though. The team had 2 mechanics, and that was pretty much it. I spoke with Nigel Elsay, and he said the goal, of course, was for the young riders to learn and grow and to make mistakes that they could learn from. The second thing I should add about the interview I had with Benjamin Perry is I mentioned that he and Nicholas Zukowski, that they won Best Climber Awards. That was in Montreal. I forgot to mention that in Quebec, Canadian winners of the Climbers Award have included Bruno Langlois and Ryan Roth. And then, there's been various riders from different nations and different teams who have racked up that honor. Okay, now on to race day. Nick, what were some of your early impressions of the Grand Prix Cyclistes de Québec?
I mean, I was just struck by, from a visuals perspective, I was just struck by sort of the many locations and the iconic photos you've seen over the years. Like, I was talking with some of the photographers before the photo meeting who have covered this race over the years, and they were telling me a couple great locations, like the bend with the Chateau Frontenac in the background. There's the big climb right in Old Quebec City. Like, there's all these amazing spots. And I think that was the thing that blew me away right off the bat, was that everything was so accessible. There were so many opportunities to get good pictures, and there were so many opportunities to sort of understand how the race was unfolding without having to tune into a stream or listen to it somewhere. Like, with people coming around so often, every 12 kilometers or so, you could sort of see how things were playing out rather than having to, refresh something on your phone. Or I thought that was really interesting compared to, watching the Giro or the Tour on TV.
The first place we headed, if I recall correctly, is the bridge over Côte de la Montagne. And that is another one of those iconic shots that you can get of the riders coming up that climb. It takes them up from down by the river level and into the old city. Like you said, there's so many vantage points. It's possible to actually see the riders, especially if you're at the eastern end of the circuit. You can catch the riders, if you're good, at least twice in one lap. We also got into one of the photo cars. Took us for a bit of a loop, and it took us to the far western side at the bottom of Côte Gilmore. And what struck me there was it was an off-camber turn. Cyclocrosser Nick here, you probably got a kick out of that, seeing roadies have to negotiate a nice off-camber turn. That I think it was even a bit wet when we were there.
Yeah, it was interesting because we had not sort of experienced that speed on the other side of the course. Like, going to the far side past Plains of Abraham, that's where you saw people pick up a lot of speed coming down that descent. It was interesting to see that in contrast to what we had seen on, I guess, the more climbier side of the route.
The way the race unfolded, it was Classic Quebec, as I heard some riders say. A breakaway got away, a breakaway of 4 riders. There was Mauri Van Sevenent, Matthias Vacek, Gianmarco Garofoli, and David Lozano. But they got caught with 44 kilometers to go, and then it came down to a classic but thrilling sprint. Jumbo-Visma let out Laporte in the closing meters of the race, but Israel Premier Tech's Corbin Strong launched a bit far, but he held it, and he looked like he would hold it to the end. But then Arnaud Delis of Lotto Destiny came from behind. He was like kind of way back, but he came around the others, his head just like swinging back and forth really hard, and he took the win just ahead of Strong. Michael Matthews was third, and as for Delis, I would not have picked him, I got to admit, but I wasn't surprised. His season has been pretty good. He's won some 1 Pro and 1.1 one-day races, which are slightly below, say, the World Tour level. And he was second at Omloop at Noseblad. So a winner that, made you say, oh, yeah, I could see that for sure. Nick, what was it like as the sprint came barreling at you as you were in that gaggle of photographers just past the finish line?
Yeah, it's so interesting from a visual perspective because you're zoomed in so much. I mean, I was at 420 millimeters with my long lens, and it's hard to tell who is in front. If you're not watching it on a bit of an angle or you're not watching it with your own eyes, you're looking at it through this viewfinder, it's hard to tell who is in front. It's hard to know who to focus on. You just have to wait for them to get a bit closer and sort of pick your person. And I mean, he wasn't on my radar. I had no idea what was going to happen. I was just watching the sprint. You could see people moving up and down as they were coming up the road. But yeah, it was pretty interesting. I mean, there was in the photo pit, a lot of people were yelling, "Oh, it's going to be a sprint! It's going to be a sprint!" And I think that was a sign to jump out of the way if you have to, depending on where they came down the line. We're only about 50 to 70 meters past the finish line where they put all the photographers, and the group was big. There was about 15 to 20 of us there. So if we needed to scramble, we were told that might have to happen. But yeah, it was interesting to see. I think I got some nice photos and it all worked out. But the perspective has changed looking through that super long lens as the sprint comes down the line.
That's interesting. So when we watch sprints on TV and there's that infamous sort of shortening of the perspective, and you can't really tell sometimes how far away the next rider is, and you see a rider celebrating and you're like, wait a minute, is he sure? Is that a similar sense of what you had when you're looking through your own lens going, pretty sure this guy's in the lead?
Well, it's interesting because there's been a couple instances this season, too, where people celebrate prematurely, like that classic sort of Riley Pickerel recently. If you are focusing on who you think is winning and they celebrate, I mean, you could potentially miss the shot of the person who actually won. And it's interesting because everybody is on the same focal plane if it's a sprint, but when there's a bunch sprint and it's really close on TV and you have to look at the photo finish, I mean, just imagine that compounded with a super long lens having to decipher who's coming across first.
Oh, you have to have lightning quick reflexes too, not just the sprinters. Look at that. Unfortunately for Team Canada, no Canucks made it into the breakaway. This is sort of the meat and potatoes of the national team. This is not just a matter of getting TV time, but it's where they can learn and really push themselves. After the race, shortly after the finish line, I caught up with Pier-André Coté, another rider who's been on the podcast. He is the current Pan American road race champion. He was the 2022 national champion, and he's the winner in 2022 of the Grand Prix Cricquillon. He has some insight just into how the race went for Team Canada. And following Pier-André Coté's interview is Guillaume Boivin of Israel Premier Tech. I also found him just before he got on stage to accept the award for the best Canadian rider of the race. Pier-André, how was it?
It was a hard edition for sure. Realized pretty early on I wasn't on the greatest legs of my life, but that's the way it goes. Had to do quite a bit of efforts to reposition with 3 and 2 laps to go, and then paid for it like on the actual climb. I was actually fighting pretty hard just to make it to the last lap, so I knew that all the panic lights were gonna go on in the dashboard on the last lap. But nonetheless, it's always great to race at home. And it's always great to be surrounded with the U23s, trying to teach them how to navigate a race like this, even if I, on my own, didn't really cracked it yet. But yeah, it's just a nice experience being at home with the younger guys and being able to race with them.
Now, you're just from across the river, aren't you? This is really a home race.
Yeah, this is as close as I can get to a home race, yeah.
And so for Team Canada, usually the playbook is to get someone in the breakaway. And Felix Hamel was close, but it didn't quite work out, did it?
Yeah, it was an unconventional for Quebec, at least, first lap. We had guys in the first move, but then it got quite hard for a lap. I think those guys overextended a little bit trying to make it in the very first attack, and then paid for it a bit. I think they were a little out of position when the wall happened and the World Tour teams just shut it down. And then when it opened again, Felix tried to go. That was the move to do, and then he tried it and didn't quite make it, and then paid for it at the end for sure, because that's a big effort to try and do on your own.
I guess that's part of the learning experience here in Quebec.
Definitely, and part of what Nigel said before the race was that they're allowed to make mistakes. It's a race to do it. I mean, we're not expecting them to do any result at all, so they're just here to learn. And yeah, I'm happy they at least went for it. And yeah, too bad we didn't make it in the break. It's always a big goal for us, but at least try to do something in the end.
Yeah, well, it was exciting seeing you in the last laps, and yeah.
Yeah, we'll see you in Montreal.
How was the race, Guillaume?
Well, it was hard. Hard race. Typical Quebec City.
You were a bit, you weren't sure how your legs were going to be following that crash a few weeks ago. How were the legs later into the race?
They were okay. Not great, not bad, but definitely better than last week. So, yeah, good day for the team. Corbin second, so we got to be happy with that.
And then, what is your feeling now, maybe for Montreal? Do you think the legs will turn around again and you'll be ready to go?
I mean, Montreal is quite a bit harder than this, so might be difficult for me on Sunday without amazing legs, but we'll give it a try with Woodsy and take care of the boys, mainly Woodsy and Corbin on Sunday.
All right, well, good luck. Thank you. And that was Guillaume Boivin. He was 41st at the Grand Prix Cyclistes de Québec, which makes him best Canadian. It's not something he was looking to get. He was there to support Corbin Strong. That was his main job. Also, he mentioned his legs and how they might not have been at their best. About 2 weeks ago at the Renouille Tour in Belgium, he was involved in a crash. So he had been recovering from that and getting a bit better and a bit better. That was Guillaume Boivin's 7th best Canadian honor, his 5th in Quebec. This is the total of 7 between the two races. I think he wouldn't mind being on the podium one day, but he's riding for his team, and so that's usually how it goes. The second place for Israel Premier Tech is a pretty big deal at this race. That's 400 UCI points. Arnaud Delis, he got 500. This is a lot of points that is important, as we remember from last year, and there's a threat of relegation for various World Tour teams. Just to give you some perspective on how these points are often or allocated at some other different races, Michael Woods' Tour de France stage win, that got him 210 points. Now, Derek G, he did a lot of work at the Giro. His 4 second places actually he got 130 points for each second place at the Giro. So that ends up being, well, more than what Corbin Strong raked in, but still, for a 1 day's worth of work there, Mr. Strong did pretty good with all those points. So Boivin and all the other riders had to reset for Montreal. After Quebec, they had a travel day, which was the Saturday, and we had to do the same. We had to pack up and leave Quebec City. And before we do leave Quebec City, though, Nick, I want to talk about our neighborhood. We did not stay in the same hotel as the riders. Some journalists who come from afar do. But we stayed in the neighborhood of Saint Roch. And I think we picked a winner. It's only about 1.5 kilometers from the race. But yeah, how would you describe the neighborhood and where we were at?
Well, talking with locals, it kind of made us look like geniuses because apparently it's a known good neighborhood in Quebec City. I mean, there was everything. It was just sort of classic Quebec City. You know, you'd walk out your door, there would be a little market, so many coffee shops, and apparently a massive street festival.
That's right. It was called Saint Roch XP. It doesn't always fall on the same weekend or in the lead up to the Quebec race. We lucked out in so many ways. Not only was there this street party right outside the place we were staying with bands and street food and shipping containers where they were selling beer. Yeah, the timing was fantastic. So for us, it really added to the festival nature of the whole event.
Another good sign that we really leaned into our neighborhood was that by the second day in Quebec City, the coffee shop down the street from us knew what my order was. So I don't know if that is more of a me problem than anything, but yeah, we were pretty much locals by that point.
That's right. You're getting the usual, which listeners, I understand is a medical need for Nick. I didn't realize before this trip how important his Joe was.
I will perish if I don't have enough coffee every day. That is true.
The one downside is, so we were just north of the start-finish line. And like I said, it was about 1 kilometer, 1.5 kilometer walk. The morning of the race, I left to get to the team presentation and then the start-finish. And I, in typical fashion, overpacked my backpack with every possible thing I could use or think I needed. It was a bit heavy. And it is a steep climb from where we were right to the start finish. And as I'm trucking to get there on time, I'm thinking, yeah, I might be gassed even before I get to the start of the race. So anyway, these are not major problems, but pace yourself, everyone. Pace yourself. It's important. From Quebec City, we drove to Montreal. Actually, let me talk a bit now about the logistics, because listeners, if you ever want to take in both these races, you do have to do a bit of planning. It can be a bit of trains, planes, and automobiles if you so wish. Our plan was to fly to Montreal, rent a car, drive to Quebec City, drive back to Montreal, and then we flew home. In previous years, in those early years, I actually flew to Quebec City, and then I was working with the organization to take advantage of their transportation, and I know some journalists do this. So civilians, you can't really do this, but it is an option to just get a car one way from Quebec City to Montreal. But I remember the first year in 2010, it was kind of spectacular. We took trains from Quebec City to Montreal. That was style. But the next year it was onto buses, onto coaches, and that is how the teams move around still to this day. I don't know. I think it worked, but I don't know. We'll explore other options next year. I don't know. What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, I think, I've never been to a road race in Europe, but I think the logistics, given the size of Canada, this is a really accessible sort of 2 races to get to. And we've talked about it. accessibility on the course and being able to see a whole bunch of different areas, descents, climbs, big long straight stretches. I just think though, there is a bit of travel involved, but I think it's pretty accessible trips to see, and there is a bit of travel involved, but when you think of how big these races are and how accessible it is, I think it's totally doable.
Definitely. And there's just options for you to explore. I spoke with one other journalist, and he ended up getting a really good train ticket from Montreal down to Toronto and then onward, actually, for like $80. So I was like, oh, that's a score. So do your planning and shopping, but yeah, you can make these races happen. And I recommend the doubleheader for sure. I know a lot of people that you and I know, Nick, they're Toronto GTA based, and they go just for the Montreal one because it is easier to do. It's on the Sunday. You can travel there on the Saturday. But if you can do the doubleheader, it's totally worth it for sure. On our travel day, we had to kind of scoot to get to Montreal a little bit. We couldn't totally faff because there was a press conference because the World Championships are coming back to Montreal. Everyone, you'll recall that Montreal hosted the first outside of Europe road World Championships in 1974. That's one that Eddie Merckx won on a very similar course to the one that Montreal has done, the Montreal GP has done on. And since then, the World Championships, the Road World Championships have come back to Canada a second time to Hamilton in 2003, and they will return in 2026. Now these press conferences can be not the most scintillating things, but I was interested because I wanted to know what the route would look like, or what at least they were thinking about the road race route. And I was kind of surprised, and I was kind of like, oh, well, at least it's a work in progress. It looks a lot like the current Grand Prix Cyclistes de Montréal circuit. It's just slightly different in that it looks like instead of doing the part where it comes down Park Avenue to do a 180 turn and then go up Park Avenue back towards the climb up Montréal or up Camélien-Houde, it goes actually a bit more, let's say, to the north. And it looks like, from what I saw, it would come down Saint-Urbain. Now, Nick, you'll know that street. That was right close to where the press office was for us. But it looks like it might come down Saint-Urbain, and maybe, though, it'd be nicer if they moved it over one and brought it down Saint Laurent, because then you could maybe catch the race while you're at Schwartz's Deli. That is currently what the world's circuit looks like. And the reason I was a little underwhelmed, let's say, is Glasgow had a circuit this past August, but it started way out. Actually, it started in Edinburgh. And it would be cool to see something, a race come from outside the city, make its way to the circuits in the city itself. But we'll see how this develops. I know it is crazy hard to close roads in North America. I mean, one thing to snarl roads with traffic for a Blue Jays game, and you have to take away active transportation to do that. But, closing a road for a bike race, that's just offensive. I see, Nick, you've got a bit of a smirk, but I think you share my maybe dismay at how we pick and choose what we close the roads down for.
I do believe that if anywhere in Canada this was possible, it would be in Quebec. I don't know how it happened in Hamilton. I live in Hamilton, and I do think Quebec and Montreal, for the most part, embrace events like this.
I agree with you 100%. Yes, if anyone can do it, it's La Belle Provence. Let's switch. Actually, let's touch on our digs in Montreal. Just, for people who are traveling and are thinking of staying in these cities. We stayed in NDG in Montreal, Notre-Dame-de-Grâce. It was a bit farther away from the race, and the neighborhood, maybe we were just used to a street party that we were like, oh, all right. However, Sherbrooke Street was cool. Actually, what it did, and because the weather was good the first night we were there, we explored the city in a very Montreal way on Bixie bikes. Nick, you were navigating that evening, and you took us up the mountain, if I recall correctly.
I would say that Google took us up the mountain. I don't take any credit for that, but I believe that we rode up and down Mount Royal on the way to Industry Party that night.
We did. Because we're all bike nerds, we were recording those Bixie rides in some capacity. And yeah, it definitely took us up the mountain. I think we avoided the mountain on the way back. We kind of went a bit wide of it. But yeah, I think the industry event was closer to Outremont. And we decided to dodge the mountain on the way back. But Bixie, get one. It's a good way to see a city. All right, back to racing. The day of the race in Montreal, the rain came. I avoided it, actually. I got into a team car. But Nick, you told me about what it was like for you. Take me to your rainy photography at the first, 3 or 4 laps in Montreal.
Well, if you avoided it, I would say I did the exact opposite. I don't know how to categorize that, but I was drenched. Like there were times when it was just coming down. My hands were getting pruny and I had my phone opened up trying to look at the radar. There were so many raindrops on my phone that I couldn't zoom in and out of the radar. I just had to look at it from afar and try to see what was happening. You'd talk to people and they would say, oh, it's going to end at this time or it's going to end by 11. You look at the time and you're like, that is an hour and 15 minutes from now. Like, I don't know if I can do this. It was a very interesting start to the morning. And then, yeah, as you said, you'd see people just zip by in cars. You'd see media in VIP cars or the photographer shuttle. And I don't know if everybody else was hunkering down, but it did make for some nice pictures. I mean, that's the whole point. That was part of the story that needs to be documented because, yeah, I'm sure that a lot of people's races changed that day based on the first couple laps and how wet it was.
I agree. And to see that element of the race, do head to Canadian Cycling Magazine, the website, and to see some of Nick's photos there that he captured. What I did is I got myself into a team car. I got myself into the national team car, Team Canada car. And here is a clip from that experience. I compressed some of the things that happened into a short little bit of my time in the team car. You will hear the window wipers going and what I was able to glean from the race from the comfort of a passenger seat of a car while Nick was getting totally drenched. The Grand Prix Cyclistes de Montréal is about to start, and I'm in the Team Canada car. Nicholas Masbourian is furiously trying to get his electronics going. He'll be driving the car. And in the back is, can you introduce yourself, sir?
Yeah, my name is Ryan Finch. I'm a mechanic with Team Canada.
And they have graciously allowed me into their space, and I'm actually quite grateful because the weather is a bit garbage right now. It is soggy. We're watching riders go by. They're still wearing their raincoats. And yeah, it's a soggy start to the Grand Prix Cyclistes de Montréal.
3 minutes avant le départ. 3 minutes to start.
The road book is on the dash. Rush would be playing on the radio if we had the volume up, which is quite appropriate, I guess, for a Canadian race. Ryan, tell me about your nest here in the back seat. What do you got going on?
Yeah, so it's a little bit hectic back here. We've got lots of riders on different equipment, unfortunately. Yeah, so I've got 3 different sets of wheels. I've got SRAM 12-speed, Shimano 12-speed, and Shimano 11-speed. Luckily, everyone's running the same rotor size. And then I got my tools and notebook, some lube, and yeah, little snacks as well.
Now, what are you expecting to, what are your duties going to be during the race? I know you're there when stuff happens, mechanicals happen, but let's say it's even one of the smoothest races. What do you have to do?
One bottle bike? Yeah,
I'll keep. I kind of keep track of the laps. Do just help the DS, the driver, as we drive through.
He's like, "Can you get me another bottle?" It's like,
and then keeping track of the clothing and spare equipment for the riders, and just kind of being a second pair of eyes as well in the caravan. The driver can't see everything, so when things can get a bit hectic around the, especially once the race starts to break up, I'll keep my eyes open and watch out the windows.
Attention pour le caravane, départ dans 5 secondes. 3, 2, 1 et c'est parti. Nous sommes en course Montreal Racing. Bienvenue à ce 12e Grand Prix cycliste de Montréal. Épreuve UCI World Tour. Welcome to the 12th Grand Prix cycliste de Montréal UCI World Tour event. Nous demandons à tous les chauffeurs de caravane d'être extrêmement vigilants en raison de la pluie. Reminding all caravan drivers to be extra cautious this morning due to the rain, especially in the downhill sections where there's paint on the ground, spécialement dans les descentes avec de la peinture au sol.
As you heard from Race Radio, the Grand Prix Cyclistes de Montréal is underway. I'm in the team car for Team Canada, and we are just passing through the start-finish. Driving the car is Nicholas Masbourian, who has raced for Team Canada at these Grand Prix events in the past. He was in the breakaway in, was it 2016?
Yep, 2016, yeah, a few years back already.
He fought hard for KOM points during the Quebec race, but that's usually the goal for Canadian riders. But today he is in the team car. He's no stranger to team cars. What are some of the other races you've assisted riders from the automobile?
Yeah, well, I've been coaching and directing since I retired now. So just this year, I did Beauce, Abitibi, Tour de l'Avenir with the national team, a few other local racing. So yeah, I'm getting used to follow the race in cars now.
It's an art form, I think. Like, there's a lot of stop-starts, and positioning is important. Can you tell me about some of the rules, actually, for the follow cars?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing to remember is it's a bike race, not a car race. So we're here to support rider, give them info. We have radio tours, so we can communicate on our own radio. What's happening in the race can be hard to see on big peloton. Then we're feeding mechanical support, of course, and that's pretty much it. Yeah.
And you've got VeloViewer here on the dashboard. You've got maps going, and I see some notes here. These look like they're for the mechanic Ryan in the back. A lot about the rider's gearing and associated mechanical stuff that they need to know. We're going up Camillien Oude. For us, it's a bit, it's almost like a rush hour traffic in Montreal. It's kind of like start and stop.
Yeah, basically, it looks like a good weeknight on Camillien Oude. Hopefully, someday we'll have only bike on this climb, but for now, it's looks like a weekday.
Au sommet de Camillien Oude, le peloton est toujours groupé. Le sommet of Camillien Oude, we still have a compact bunch.
Peloton groupé, no break, bunch back. Alright boys, time to position for a second time up Camillien Oude. Time to position. Many rider in the caravan already, many rider in the car already.
Kilomètre 11 avec du 187 Vermiche, Local Destiny, number 11, attack of number 187 Vermiche from Local Destiny.
The first lap of this Grand Prix Montreal is tough. It's wet, and it seems to be giving some riders some trouble.
Et le peloton pointe à 10 secondes, 10 seconds time gap.
Un coureur solo 10 secondes, one solo rider 10 seconds.
17 tours à faire, 17 laps to go. Le bon parcours avant chasse, we now have a rider chasing. Il s'agit du 227, 227 Barry du Canada, Barry from Canada. Il est à 15 secondes, time gap is 15 seconds to the chase. Le peloton est à 20 secondes.
Good job, Ben. 15 seconds. Good job, Ben. 15 seconds to the break.
Just as the first lap of the race came to a close, St. Catherine's Ben Perry from St. Catherine's on Team Canada, is trying to make contact with a breakaway rider. He's about 15 seconds behind.
Kilomètre 14, le machin, c'est à 35 secondes, le peloton à 40 secondes, at kilometer 14, the chasing rider is at 35 seconds, and the pack is at 40 seconds.
Ben, gap is now 35 seconds to the breakaway, to the solo rider, 35 seconds.
Please stop for the breakaway.
So current race situation, we have a solo rider for Lotto Destiny, 35 seconds back we have Ben, and then 40 seconds is the peloton.
There is no more chasing rider, le peloton est à 35 secondes, the pack is at 35 seconds.
No more chase, Ben is cut. Time to go again, boys.
While information is coming in through race radio, it's still, for me, as someone who covers cycling usually from the television, it feels a bit blind, a bit lacking in info, but the DS is putting it together for his riders, getting the information they need. It is possible to maybe watch a feed in the car, but you got to remember that that feed is about a minute behind what's actually happening in the race. So you may get some intel, but you've just got to juggle your sources as they're coming in. Earlier, Nicholas made the point that this is not a car race, it's a bike race, but in the caravan with some of the sudden accelerations and turns, because the cars have to stay together, they can't be strung out. Because of some of the accelerations and hard turns, it feels a bit racy even for this passenger.
We're going to drop you at the 10 and see if we can...
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, sounds good.
Hey, bye. Thanks, guys.
Take care.
How's it going?
So as you could hear there, I had some very kind of quick goodbyes with the guys in the Team Canada car. It was time for me to leave, and there's no messing around by the roadside. I had to jump out. What you did hear there was the attempt that Benjamin Perry had made to get into the break. And for a while, I was almost thinking, oh, shades of 2016. Is he going to get in the break again? But no, the race was crazy hard. And as you could also hear there was Florian Vermeersch. He was the lone breakaway rider. He was out for a good chunk of the day, getting more than 5 minutes on the group. But when they decided they wanted him back, they got him back. And, you could blame a lot of stuff on the rain, but you could also blame stuff on pizza. I was going around the team tents, and in the latter stages of the race, teams had stacks of boxes of Domino's pizza, and riders who would drop out would swing by, maybe get their rain jacket on, and grab a box of pizza and then head back to the hotel to sort of recover. And so that was a pattern throughout the day as many riders abandoned.
At the early stages of the race, I would have 100% dropped out for a box of pizza as well. Just wanted to make that known.
Nick, there was rain, and it really stretched out the race. It maybe made it a little bit more hazardous than it usually is, but you faced a hazard. I don't think it was one that you expected. You were going to get a photo. Were you lying on the ground when suddenly you felt a sharp pain? Can you tell me what happened there?
I wasn't even in a compromising position. I was just standing, looking through the viewfinder, not really paying attention to what was happening with the peloton, and I just got belted in the torso with a bottle. And I mean, I know that's a thing that happens. I guess I just wasn't expecting it. And there was like a half torn off gel on it, and I was like covered in a bit of goo. It was just a real different experience than what I was expecting,
So you got slugged by a bottle. I mean, who would have thought these are hazards for just your average spectator, photographer. But yes, you have to keep your wits about you at these races. I have another segment lined up. Now, this next segment features an old friend of the podcast, 2 stars of cyclocross and mountain biking. But the first voice you will hear is someone who Michael Woods and I spoke about in a previous episode of the Canadian Cycling Magazine podcast. That is John Adams, aka Disco, a soigneur. He's been a soigneur for a while, for many years now. He worked with Spider Tech back in the day. He worked with Woods on EF, and now he's on Israel Premier Tech. He was a busy man. I kind of I snuck up on him a bit while he was working at the Israel Premier Tech tent. And he is from St. Catharines, like Benjamin Perry, and also Steve Bauer, who was de-essing at the race. And he also mentions in this clip another gent from that town helping out at IPT, and that's Tim Lefevre. The next person in this clip is someone I had just met on the main climb, that climb Camillien Oud. Her name is Charlotte. She's a young member of the Ottawa Bicycle Club, and she had come to Montreal not only to catch the races, but with another project. John Adams, Israel Premier Tech, also known as Disco. You look a bit cold here in the Israel Premier Tech tent.
I am. I'm a little bit cold, but I have my friend Tim Lefevre here. He's gonna warm me up. And right now we're getting these bottles prepared with some gels on it. We're starting the gels a little early because it's cold. The guys don't want to reach into their pockets and pull out the gels, so it's just easier for them to take it from the bottle.
This isn't your first rodeo. You've thought of every little detail here.
I've done this race since it started. Well, not since it started, but since it was reborn. So yeah, I've done it quite a bit.
All right, I will let you focus on the work at hand.
Yeah, it's great. No problem. Thanks a lot.
Can you tell me your name?
My name's Charlotte.
And can you describe what you're holding, Charlotte?
It's a sign that says, "Feed the basket, take a bottle shot," and it has a basketball net at the bottom.
And how long did it take you to construct this thing? It looks like that's not a broom, but some sort of...
It's a fishing net. And then I made the basketball net with string. It took me maybe 3 hours at most. It was lots of fun, though.
And how long have you been out here on the side of the road? We're on Camillien Oud right now.
A while. Since the race started.
Okay, so you've been out here, you've got your basketball net, and how many shots have the pros taken at this net?
0. Unfortunately. 0, yeah.
All right, I'm sorry for the low record of shots right now, but do you think you might change location? What do you think you need to do to get more bottle shots?
I'm hoping the next time around that they'll shoot. If not, I'm gonna go back to the start and finish and hope that after the race they'll recognize it and maybe give me their empty bottles.
I think maybe near the end of the race you might find more luck because as things are going to get harder and harder in the closing laps, so they might be cross-eyed and not being able to make good shots.
Absolutely.
All right, well, good luck. I hope someone gets a 3-pointer.
Thank you.
You never know who you're going to run into here on the Camillien Oud climb at the Grand Prix Cyclistes de Montréal. With me right now is a friend of the podcast, former, I don't know, what was your title here?
I would say creator of segments and game shows. I don't think we'll have time to bring back the favorite segment of all time, what does this pro-Italian team sponsor do? But I don't know, it's great to be back in Montreal, great to be back at the GP.
For people who haven't, who weren't back in the day, listeners.
Not OG listeners. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. This is Dan Walker. Also, one of his famous inventions was full send, no send.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think just full send on being back at the Grand Prix, right?
That's right.
We have time for that segment. Yeah.
Today's been full send. The weather has been, I know photographer Nick is into it because it's making for good photos.
Yeah, it's good drama for the spectators. I don't know, it seems like a hearty crowd here. Everyone's got their rain jackets on. Vibes are good. If we're doing a vibe check, it's high, they're positive. Yeah, man, I don't know. The city loves a good event.
That's right. And we are in, I don't know, somewhere around 8 laps to go. And the lone breakaway, Mr. Vermeersch has been out all day by himself, doing a training ride of Camille like so many Montrealers.
That's it. He is going to either have the KOM or get local legend status.
For sure. It's a long race, very attritional. And I even saw not too long ago Derek G off the back. He had done his
G
work.
Fan club even hanging out on the hill here.
The official, parents?
Yeah,
fan club?
Parents and Ruby. Yeah.
He's got mad support from the family. But yeah, I would agree with you. Good vibes, even under gray skies. This is unfair, but do you have any predictions?
Ooh. Let's think about it. I don't know. Could we see a return to form of vintage Lulu?
Vintage Lulu?
Vintage Lulu?
Possibly. He's been quiet, hasn't he?
He has been quiet. Maybe he's cagely hiding in the peloton. But if not, who are we thinking? The heart pick is home province or adopted home province rider Michael Woods.
With a place in Chelsea, Quebec.
Yeah, just in Quebec. So he's just a home province rider, but it counts. The FQSC likes to promote him when it matters.
It's true. I think possibly Adam Yates, 4th last year.
That's it. If we know anything about this race, it's the guys who do well continue to keep doing well. We've had a lot of repeat winners, and someone who knows how that finish ends, because if you go too early, it's a really, really long uphill sprint. So even if you're going from 300 meters, you got a long way to go. So maybe it's got someone who knows that they have to go at 150, something like this, and it's still a long way uphill.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% about that finish. So, I think it's time that we keep walking around, checking it out. Thank you so much, Dan, for making a cameo.
Always happy to be back. And if we do want to bring back everybody's favorite segment, the people's segment, if you will, either Full Send, North Send, or what does that new Pro Conti / Continental Italian team's sponsor do? We can work on the name. I'm available.
All right. I know where to find you. Thank you so much, Dan. All right, I have found Charlotte once again. Charlotte with the basketball net, and she figured out the secret here. She is by the feed zone, near the start finish. Charlotte, how many baskets have you got?
I've gotten 3 now. 3. I'm very excited. This is the spot to be. They come around, and then there's a bunch of bottles left over, and everyone's throwing them, and it's great. It's super awesome.
Well, congratulations. Sounds like a success.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
Following on the theme of you don't know who you're going to run into at the Grand Prix Montreal, I'm with Isabella and Ava Holmgren. Hello.
Hi. Hello.
You guys were just on stage, and I understand you're going to ring the bell lap?
Yeah, we were just asked to ring the bell lap for the Montreal Grand Prix, which is pretty cool.
Have you done any practice? Has this been sprung on you?
Well, we've cheered on some teammates with cowbells, but we've never rung a bell for the last lap, so this will be a first for us.
All right, so I won't keep you too long, but you recently signed for Little Trek. What people want to know is, how are you going to balance out all the different disciplines that you participate in?
So, yes, we've signed with Little Trek, and they're a road team, so the primary focus will be on the road. However, there might be an opportunity to do some cyclocross or some mountain biking, but we're going to talk with the team about that soon.
Primarily road, and that's sort of what you were doing. That's why you weren't at Mountain Bike Nationals this year. So this was something you were cooking up?
Yeah, we actually had to miss Mountain Bike Nationals for a stage race in Spain. But yeah, it's nice to do a mix of everything, but I think doing more road will definitely help us a lot.
All right, well, I won't keep you any longer because you have race duties today. Enjoy.
Thank you so much.
So, Nick, how do you feel about the Holmgrens Ava and Isabella planning to race mostly road next year. That's a bit of information that I was really happy to learn. I was happy to run into them at the Grand Prix de Montreal. But how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because a lot of, even Canadians that don't follow bike racing closely might know their names, just because of the success they've had recently. But that success hasn't come on the road, which will be their primary discipline going forward. I thought that was really interesting, because I know them as, cyclocrossers, more recently sort of mountain bike racers. Truthfully, haven't heard anything about their successes on the road, but I guess they've been doing great. There's been a lot of talk in the group chats and amongst the cycling community about where they're headed now with this new contract. So it was interesting to hear that.
I, too, like you, really dig the cyclocross. And I just, hope they're back in the mud as well. And I know Trek is a big fan of cross. They have a World Cup in Wisconsin there. So, I think they will have their opportunities there, but we'll see. We'll see how they actually end up balancing out all those disciplines. The race concluded with a not so surprising winner. He was my pick, actually, and I was teased by another journalist by how uncreative it was, but Adam Yates won the race. He was fourth there in Montreal last year. He knows the course well. Pavel Sivakov was second, and in third was Alex Aramburu. So in a way, this was also a classic race. The whole peloton was shattered, and a very select group came to the line. In this final clip, I speak with Derek G. Other than Michael Woods, only G from Israel Premier Tech finished. We did see Guillaume Boivin watching the race. He did not head back to the hotel, but he stuck around to watch the race. And Woods was quite gutted by finishing 15th at Montreal. He only chatted with the people he had to. It seemed only TV cameras, and he went up on stage because he was the best Canadian. But he was gutted, and he after the race he went to collect himself. It seemed, and I get it. He had his hopes really pinned to this. The team worked so hard for him, but he wasn't able to get on the podium. I chatted with G really quick at the end. Nick, you got a great photo of him, also on the website. In my chat, I learned something about the conclusions you can draw when you're watching a race by the roadside. I saw him around the 8th lap, and he was kind of off the back, and I was like, uh-oh. Of course, later I knew that he had rejoined the group, but here in this clip, we find out exactly why he was off the back at around 8 laps to go, I should say. How was it for you, Derek?
Hard day, but the crowds are really cool, so.
And how would you compare it to a hard Giro stage or anything? What do you have to compare?
You can't compare with a one day. It's just so intense and everyone's going for it. So, it was fun. A lot of fun. But
you did it a few more times this time than in 2010, where you were 13 and you did it once, right?
Yeah, it was, they never seemed to end, those laps.
Well, and it seemed like sometimes you're at the back and you were able to catch back on. I think around 8 laps to go, you were sagging a bit. Was it variable for you?
Oh, I just stopped for a pee break. But then, the race really started kicking off, so maybe it wasn't the best timing.
So, you heard me wondering why he was off the back with about 8 laps to go. It was just a pee break. Simple as that. Also, Nick, I should add that I saw Quinton Ermans also pull over to the side of the road at one point. Maybe it is his bottle that hit you. Wouldn't that be great?
I would love to speculate. Rob Sterney, who wrote the race report, even told me who he thought it was with far less information than I had. So I thought that was interesting too. We can attribute it to anybody.
That's right. Right now, I have the bottle, and I'm going to send it to Rob Sterney because he appreciates all kinds of cycling swag and memorabilia. But anyway, yeah, I saw Quentin Hermans and I thought of you because your cyclocross leanings there, Nick. And I was like, oh, great, I'll take a picture of Quentin Hermans for No, Quentin's taking a nature break. I'll just leave him alone. I guess I would say that was a successful Grand Prix Cycliste. I mean, for Nick and I. The Canadians, it was a really tough race. National team, 2 races, no one in the break. And actually, unfortunately, at Montreal, it was so tough. Not one team member finished. But I'm sure they learned heaps, and really excited to see that project again next year. And yeah, I think not only should we return next year, Nick, but I recommend listeners go to these races. Make it happen. These are amazing races, amazing events, and the caliber of rider that you see there is just off the hook.
Sharing our coverage with some of my friends, in the community, I think I converted them, and I think they'll be joining us next year too. It's just so accessible. Yeah, it was such a fun time.
And that's the episode. It is written and edited by me, Matthew Pioro. I didn't really have any help from Matt Hansen this time. Actually, no, that's not true. He helped a bit. And so did Terry McCall, as always. And thanks again, Nick. Thank you for your help with this episode.
Yeah, happy to be here. I'm sad that Matt's gone forever and I'll be taking over, but this was a lot of fun.
Okay. Still, somehow he has the same humor as Hansen. All right, another person who doesn't get it. Hey, Nick, so this episode is produced by Adam Killick. Do you know what else Adam does?
No, I have absolutely no idea.
Oh, well, then you just lost the job, because Adam Killick also does the music. Clearly, you've never listened to the end of one of these episodes.
That's incredible.
Wow, okay, as usual, the episode comes to such a perfect finish. But in all seriousness, Nick, thank you so much for your help here and at the races. It was really great working with you. And yeah, I'll see you again soon. And that, everyone, is Nick nodding and giving a thumbs up. So he will not be back anytime soon. Thanks to Ontario Creates for its support. And also, thank you, listeners, for listening. Please rate and review the show. Tell people about the pod. Tell people about the Quebec races. Ride safely, and we'll talk to you later.